Hey guys, and welcome back to another Back 4 Blood video. I'm Game Advisor, and today we'll be going over some of the absolutely best cards within Back 4 Blood. At the end of the video, we'll be going over a general deck that you can use regardless of your playstyle. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, let's talk about weapon-specific cards. There are four major ones you're going to want to keep in mind, which are going to be Tactical Vest, Stock Pouch, Mag Carrier, and Shell Carrier. Each one of these is for a specific grouping of weapons, or in other words, a specific ammo type, and will boost all damage used with said ammo, as well as your capacity for that ammo. I highly recommend these cards as they give you a huge damage boost and ammo capacity as long as you know what playstyle you kind of are going to be going for. For an example, if you're playing the sniper in your group and you know you're going to be using snipers, having 30% extra ammo and 10% overall damage is a huge boost with absolutely no penalties. Now there are some other cards in there such as Rolling Thunder, Buckshot Bruiser, Scattergun Skills, Speed Demon, Line 'em Up, Meat Grinder, and I think there's a few other ones as well. The idea here is if you know you're going to be playing something and you want to go even further into that weapon style, these cards can also be extremely useful. In particular, I really like Scattergun Skills if you're using a shotgun because 40% reload speed is absolutely massive compared to any of the other cards in the game that are related to reload speed. So just keep these in mind. If this is something you know you're going to be doing and you know you're going to be playing a specific weapon type, then do keep these cards on your radar as they can give you a huge amount of additional bonus damage, reload speed, move speed, all sorts of different things for that weapon. After that, let's talk about team cards. Team cards have a variety of value depending on which one you're looking at and the situation that you're in. The biggest thing you need to be wary of when you're using these team cards is going to be things like Rousing Speech, which will prevent that player from using any offensive accessories. So if you're going to run something like Surplus Pouches, where everybody on your team gets one additional offensive accessory, and somebody else is also running Rousing Speech, they're not going to gain from that benefit. So in that scenario, you might just be better off taking a personal increase to your offensive accessories so that you're not wasting the value of that card. Now, in order of value, based on my personal opinion and my experience with the game, I think Boxo Bags and Surplus Pouches are extremely high value. Having everybody on your team take Boxo Bags will give your entire team 5 healing item slots, which is absolutely massive. Just imagine never having to pass up on all those bandages, pills, medkits, and all sorts of other things along the way when you're doing every single run. Or Surplus Pouches, being able to have 20 pipe bombs on your team is absolutely ridiculous. There are so many things to gain value from these, so I highly recommend you use these two, even if you only have 3 people on your team that can benefit from it. But if you're down to just 2 and say 2 people are running Rousing Speech, at that point they may no longer be worth it. After that, you have Inspiring Sacrifice, which is one of the most commonly used cards. This card will give you 25 HP over 20 seconds for the entire team that is not currently down whenever another player goes down. That means if one player goes down and all 4 of you are running this card, you will then all get 80 HP, minus the person that is currently downed, of course. After that is where we start to move into some of the mid-value team cards, which are things like Share the Wealth, everybody gets 100 copper at the start of each level, Safe Room Recovery, which is your team heals 5 trauma damage and refills 10% ammo at the start of each level, Well Fed, everybody gets 10 HP, and then we start really moving into some of the like okay-ish ones with like +1 team extra life, which is extremely valuable when you're playing on the hardest difficulty, but when you're not and people aren't dying too often, it's really not that big of a deal. And as we move all the way down at the bottom, we have things like +15% stamina, which is just really not that big of a deal. I think there's a few other team cards out there like +10 team HP, which can have value. It just really depends on your team's build, what you enjoy, what you like. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to talk about here is that the big ones are Boxo Bags, Surplus Pouches, and Inspiring Sacrifice, with all of the other ones kind of falling into a situational stance, depending on how your team is playing, how long your run is going to go, and all these other factors. finally, let's move on to the oddballs section. There are a lot of cards in here that are super powerful and are kind of just unique, so that's why I have them kind of categorized as oddballs. So first up is Down in Front. If you are playing on normal difficulty, which is veteran or higher, then you absolutely need to have this card. This is one of the best cards in the game. While crouching, you neither can take or deal friendly damage. So this is insanely powerful, but they go even a step further and they're like, you know what? You deserve 10 extra HP. Here you go. So I highly recommend you guys take this. I take so much team damage from people who don't use it, and it can save so much time and effort just constantly spraying and being able to spray through your allies rather than accidentally killing them. After that is Marked for Death. Marked for Death really only needs to be taken by one player. It has two major advantages. One, if you see a mutation, you can ping it with Q, and it will actually highlight it with a red border. This will then increase the damage that mutation takes by 10% from all allies. So this can be extremely powerful. However, I don't believe this stacks. I could be wrong on that one, but from my understanding, this does not stack. Therefore, it's really not that useful if everybody's running it. So communicate with your team. Only one person really needs to have this card. Next is Knowledge is Power. This is just going to give you 10% increased weak spot damage, which alone is a very useful buff, but it also allows players to see values for the damage they deal and enemy health bars. That means you can see the health bars of all the mutations that you come across. You also deal 10% additional damage to any of their weak spots. This can also tell you how much damage you're doing to it. There's just so much value in knowing, hey, this guy needs one more shot. Rather than running away, I'm just going to keep pumping some bullets into him. Whereas sometimes if you don't have this, you'll keep shooting and not realize he has too much HP for you to burn through and get smacked by, say, a tall boy, and it can totally ruin a run when you're doing the higher difficulties. After that is Breakout. Breakout is the hold E to free yourself from grabs ability. This is the thing that the afro hair guy has. It's super useful, but it basically allows every character to run it. It's a 60-second cooldown, yes, but if you don't have an ally nearby, or if you're playing on higher difficulties and get grabbed by the guys who pull you away, then they have to shoot it or melee it, which means they also have to hit you, and you're gonna take team damage. Being able to break that grab by yourself prevents you from having to take any team damage in the first place. Aside from the fact that if everybody drops down a cliff for the next checkpoint and you haven't dropped down yet, being able to save yourself has saved me so many times that it is just incredibly useful regardless of the difficulty that you're on. Next up is Medical Professional. This one's very simple. Anytime you use a first aid kit or you use a defibrillator, it will restore 15 trauma damage and 1 extra life. I don't think I need to tell you the value of removing trauma damage, especially in longer runs, but it also restores an extra life, which is incredibly powerful on the higher difficulties. Now, moving into some more of the obscure ones here, we have things like Hazard Pay, which just give you 250 bonus copper at the start of a run. You have Share the Wealth, which gives everybody on your team 100 copper. And then we move into some more of the categorized ones, such as Weak Spot Damage. Any Weak Spot Damage card is going to be very high in value. It is so useful to take out specials. It is so useful to take out bosses when you have a ton of weak spot damage. I think you can get 100% just off 3 weak spot damage cards. So don't take these lightly. I highly recommend if you have them, you run them in your deck if you have the availability for it or you just have a slot you need to fill. Reload speed is the next thing that is also super powerful. Reload speed in Back 4 Blood is huge. There are plenty of times you're going to be getting swarmed and you need to pump out damage. 30% reload speed, even though you may take 5% additional damage, is basically just 30% additional damage. That makes this card incredibly powerful. There are other cards that increase reload speed, but this is for all weapons, so it stacks with many other ones. And keep in mind, all reload speed cards stack. You can get something like 90% or 100% reload speed increase with shotguns, which are already one of the slowest reloading weapons, so you can just pump out the damage into those specials without ever really having to stop. Now, moving into the last few here, we have the Combat Knife and Battle Lust cards. Battle Lust is just useful because you get 2 HP every time you melee kill something, where Combat Knife is very useful because it turns your melee into a one-shot kill on any of the low level monsters. Now again, this is just super powerful. Being able to one-shot something with a melee rather than just push it off of you can save you when you're getting swarmed or allow you to be significantly more stealthy and skip having to deal with a lot of other mobs. Battle Lust just allows you to heal from this, so it can be extremely useful as well when combined with the Combat Knife perk. Lastly is just the general bullet damage cards. These just increase all damage with whatever gun you happen to be using. These can be very kind of situational in a way because there are a lot of other high value cards and it depends on what kind of playstyle you're going for. Of course, if you're trying to play the medic, you may not take these, but in general, if say you have an assault rifle build and you just want an extra 5% damage and 50% bullet penetration, which means those bullets are going to go through the zombie and hit the next zombie behind it, there's really no reason not to take these. It's almost just free damage on top of other cards that are already adding damage. I like to have these towards the mid to end of my deck because as you approach the later parts of acts, zombies start to have more HP and you need that damage to still be able to one-shot or two-shot them. Okay, so moving into the end of the video, we have just kind of a generalized deck that will work no matter what playstyle you're going for. Of course, if you want to specialize in things like medic or DPS or all sorts of different other things, there are better ways to go about that. But this is a deck that you can use whenever you hop into a quick play and you don't really know what everybody's doing and you're still going to be effective no matter what. The first card I take in here is Combat Knife because Combat Knife is just so powerful to be able to remove zombies in one hit. After that is Down in Front, which if you're not playing on normal and you don't want to build a new deck for non-normal play, you can just not choose to take this card, assuming you're not too far into the acts, of course. But being able to use this is incredibly powerful. If you're playing on normal above, you have to have this right out the get-go. It is just too good to pass up on. After that is Marked for Death. Once again, this is a card you can skip if you have another player in your team that is already using it. But in general, a lot of players don't run it, and it just gives you so much team damage as well as the ability to see things through walls. Next is your Medical Professional, which is again overall just very useful. A first aid or a defibrillator is no longer a meh kind of an item and is now a powerhouse, being able to remove 15 trauma damage and restore an extra life. Then we have the Breakout, which is again going to be very useful when you're going into a quick match. This is going to be able to allow you to save yourself and not have to rely on teammates. Then we move down further into the game and we're assuming at this point you've now made it to the 5th or 6th mission or maybe the 4th mission and people are starting to take trauma damage. I like to have this card as an option as to help my team to deal with their trauma that they're having. Okay, moving further, we have a card that I haven't mentioned yet, which is 2 is 1 and 1 is none. This basically just allows you to have 2 primaries, which is a great way to deal with any ammo issues you might be having by running 2 weapons that use 2 different types of ammo. Number 8 is going to be your Knowledge is Power, which is just 10% weak spot damage and being able to see health bars. Again, extremely useful. This card could even go higher up on the list, but for me, it's kind of a card that's just useful to have and you don't absolutely always need it, so that's why it's farther down. As we're moving further in, now we're dealing with mobs that have a lot more HP, which is why we're taking things like Hyper Focused, which is weak spot damage. Again, you don't have to take this one if you don't have it yet, or if you just don't like the debuff. You can take anything with weak spot damage. You just want something to help you deal with those specials quicker, as they're going to start to get tanky by this point in the act. Once again, we have more weak spot damage with Reckless Strategy, and we're moving into some more of the generalized cards that can really just work for just about every single build. We have Boxo Bags, which again, we're moving into the later acts now. We're taking more damage. We need to be able to heal it. So this is going to give everybody more support items. We're going to need more pipe bombs as well as Molotovs, because we're moving into those more difficult missions at the end of acts. So we're going to run Surplus Pouch, which is going to give your entire team an additional grenade slot. Now we have Reload Speed for just again, 30% additional damage basically of being able to reload your weapon faster. This does come at a disadvantage of 5% damage taken. So you can run a 20% reload speed if you don't want to have that debuff. Now we're on Inspiring Sacrifice, which is a very useful card, but at the end of the day, it just can't compete with some of the values of these other ones, but you still might end up picking it up if you decide to pass on things like Marked for Death or 2 is 1 and 1 is none, because you're just not struggling with those issues, so this gives you another option for a good card near endgame. Then finally, I'm running Reload Drills, which is just a great card again in general. It's basically 20% increased damage because we can reload 20% faster, which means we can put 20% more bullets down range. At the end of the day, I think this deck is going to get you in a good place, and if you don't have some of these cards unlocked, guys, it is perfectly fine to run substitutes. The biggest one I recommend you pick up is always going to be Down in Front and Combat Knife. These two cards are by far, in my personal opinion, probably the single best cards in the entire game, regardless of the difficulty, of course, unless you're running on easy for Down in Front. Down in Front is probably the best card, but Combat Knife is a very, very close second. Well guys, we're here at the end of the video, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it informational. If I missed out on anything, or you guys think there's any cards that are super good that I just totally skipped over, please feel free to comment down below and let others know so they can get better at the game too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.